Hello and welcome to Art and Self. I'm Cindy Ingram, your host and the founder of Art Class Curator, the Curated Connections Library, and the Art and Self Connection Circle. This is a podcast where we experience the range and depth of what it means to be human, seen through our connections and conversations about works of art. These art conversations are here to show you that art is here for you as a catalyst, a challenger, a coach, and a comfort. Before we get started, take a moment to fill up your lungs with a deep breath. Connect with your body and your mind and your spirit, and get ready to discover what art has to show you. Hello, it's Cindy Ingram, and I am back with the Art and Self podcast. Today, I have a absolutely delightful guest, Dr. Charryse Johnson, and we talk about one of my favorite artworks to talk about. But before we begin that conversation, I want to tell you that the Art Connection Circle is back. So if you have been really wanting to participate in this magical program, you can head over to artandself.com/circle for all the details. If you're listening to this before April 24th, you might not get the full details on the website. The registration will actually be opening up this weekend on the 22nd, the 23rd, and the 24th. I'm waiting for a couple of pieces of my summer to be decided before I can officially open up the program. But I'm going to tell you about it now because I know it's going to be happening any day now. And what the program is, so if you like listening to these interviews, these conversations, not really interviews, these conversations about art, then I know that you will love the circle. In the circle, we have a small group of people who meet regularly and discuss art together through the lens of better knowing ourselves and better knowing each other. So we talk about our values, we talk about our beliefs, we talk about what we want in the world, we talk about our big vision for the world and the essences we need to embody in order to accomplish that big vision. It is very heavily focused on yourself, but also at the same time, really diving into some really beautiful works of art and doing so in a community of people who are also doing the same thing as you. And so these conversations get really deep and connected and intimate, and you really get to know the people in the group in such a special and beautiful way. So this summer, I have 2 cohorts running. So I know that a lot of you listening are teachers. Some of you get out at the end of May, and then you go back in early August. Some of you stay in school until late June, don't go back to school till Labor Day. So I have 2 cohorts that will be running. One will start in June and will end by the end of July. The other one will start in July and will end in August. So it should help those of you who are teaching different schedules. So those details will be posted at artandself.com/circle. If the details are not there when you get to the link, just put your email in and you will get an email whenever registration goes live. It truly is the most wonderful program. It is something that I can't even believe that I created, how magical it is. I mean, I can believe it, but I can't believe it. But it also feels like my entire life led to create the person that is able to create this program. Like, it is that special and that amazing. And I love it so much. And I really hope that you're there with me this summer as we talk about art together. So again, artandself.com/circle. And now let us talk to Dr. Charryse Johnson about a really amazing work of art. So you will see which one she chooses and hear our conversation next. Thank you so much. Here we go. Hello again to the Art and Self podcast. Today, I am so excited to welcome Dr. Charryse Johnson to the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Me too. Okay, so before we get started, can you introduce yourself for our listeners?
I absolutely can. So I am a mental health therapist by day, and on the side, I'm an author, keynote speaker, and a mindfulness practitioner. So a little bit of everything located in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Awesome. And you have a book that you're promoting too. Tell us a little bit about your book.
Yeah. So I wrote a book during the pandemic because why not? Called Expired Mindsets, Releasing Patterns That No Longer Serve You Well. And it's just an introspective book that talks about the difference between what we show on the outside and what might be underneath, and how do we create a level of congruency or realize what parts of our past are still impacting our present.
Wonderful. Yeah. Oh, the way you said that made me think about art too. And like, that is exactly kind of what's happening in art too. That there's what we see and there's like what's underneath too. So that'll be fun, some comparisons that we can make in our conversation. Okay. So I picked 4 artworks, and these are some of my favorites. So I was really excited to present them to you. You know, we had for the listeners, we had a little conversation quite a while ago at this point, but, you know, just to introduce ourselves. And I knew almost right away after talking to you what artwork I was going to choose. Like, this is
That's awesome.
So I hope you like them. All right. I'm going to put them up on the screen. I'm going to say the titles, but don't spend too much thought towards the titles. It really is what you see.
Okay.
And sometimes the titles can skew us in a weird direction. So it's really, I like to focus on, but I'm saying the title so our listeners can know what we're looking at. And listeners, of course, you can find all these images on the show notes at artandself.com. All right. So our first one is called 4 Barrel Right by Lorna Simpson. And then we have Equilibrium by Amy Sherald, A Timely Rescue by Nadine Pierre, and Chasm by Daniel Popper. And then I just have multiple views of Chasm there because it's
these are all incredible, and I am gravitating and physically responding to Chasm.
Okay, yeah, that was the first one you made a sound, so I was like, oh, this might be it.
I was like,
wonderful. Wow. Okay, I love this one. Okay, so I'm going to change my view to make it a little bit bigger. Let me know if you can still see it.
Yes, I can.
Okay. All right. So I want to hear what your first reactions were, and then we'll describe it and then just kind of go from there. So what were your first reactions?
I would say the reaction was conflicting in one sense. Like, I feel like there's a part of me that almost wants to weep when I look at it, and I'm not a easily tearful person. And then there's another part of me that feels like there's just so much. I resonate with it in so many ways, or I feel like we could all probably resonate with it in a lot of different ways.
Awesome. Well, I love that you had that sort of physical body sensation. That's when you know it's right. It's like just kind of catches you off guard, and
it did.
Art has that power. Okay. So can you describe it for our listeners, and then I'll fill in, anything that I notice as well after describe it.
I would say, imagine a seaport, and then you're walking up to the seaport to kind of go underneath a statue, and the statue has 2 rectangular bases on the side, and then it's literally a person kind of split in half from the neck up, and along their shoulders up to their neck are colors, but also wheels and funnels and symbols. I'm noticing an eye that has a teardrop out. And then the person who is split in half, it's interesting. You can see where they're split, but also see where they're still connected by what looks like nails. And for me, the expression on the face of the person looks in between both exhaustion and maybe relief. It really just depends on maybe how you see it.
Yeah. And I noticed too, and I'll show you some other views of it, but depending on where you're looking at it from, since it is it is 3-dimensional, the expression looks kind of slightly different from different angles. And that's kind of an interesting aspect of it. Yeah. So this sculpture is probably, I don't have the dimensions, but I mean, it's probably like 6 times as tall as a person. It's got to be like 30 to 50 feet tall, but I'm terrible with space, but I have to judge it by people. And I think it's about 5 or 6 people tall. So it's kind of like it's a gateway. You can walk through it in like her heart space where that's open. And then it's just her shoulders and her head. and all the color, all those images that, would you rather me call you Charryse or Dr. Johnson, or do you?
Oh, just Charryse is fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I didn't know how formal you wanted.
Yeah.
I was going to say
Nope.
Charryse. I'm like, oh, but what if I need to? Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Good. That was my instinct, but I like to check. And now I forgot what I was saying. This is my ADHD then. Okay.
No, you were saying the heart space is open, and I was literally getting ready to
the
write that
colors.
down. Yeah, and then the colors is what you were going to
Okay.
say.
Yeah. And I was like, those the images that Charryse mentioned, like the eye and different things, are like they're spray paint, graffiti, very bold, very like lots and lots of different types of images, some tags, some like actual drawings and stuff. Okay. And let's see, anything else? You mentioned like the pipes and the wheels and the things like that, all kind of coming off of it. And yeah, that's pretty much the basics. Again, I always say this every episode, but it's so hard to explain. And so I'm sure the listener at this point has looked at the picture, but you can look at the picture on the show notes at artandself.com. And you can also look at the image. If you're watching this on video, you'll see the image on the like video thumbnail thing too. So really, really cool work of art. All right. So what is drawing you to talk about first?
I am so drawn to the nails or just where things split, right? Like that just really stands out to me because I feel like that's such a common human experience where we feel split, whether that's between our decisions, our relationships, our own ways of being, right? Like this is what I want to do and this is what I keep doing instead. And that really stands out to me.
Yeah. So it's almost the negative space in the artwork, the space where there's nothing that's like drawing you in. That's really interesting.
And I think part of that is for me and the way that my mind thinks, I always think what visually seems like nothing is always something.
Yeah.
Right. Like there has to be a story right behind the split and what created it and what caused it and what it's like as well, you know, for this person to try to shoulder that split, right? Because you see shoulders and an open heart and this split. And when something's kind of off balance, what is that like to carry? That's where my mind goes.
Yeah. Is there any particular example or something that you're thinking of when you're looking at this? Like, what could this person be going through that's causing this split?
The first word that comes to mind for me is anguish. Something that feels heavy, which for me is just a part of their eyes being closed and their head being slightly tilted, which we have a tendency to do when we're sighing or trying to find a level of relief. And so that really stands out to me. Like this is a person who is just weighted down and in a level of anguish and feels torn.
Yeah. And it makes me like her expression is, her eyes are closed and like she has, and I'm saying she, I always gender things as she because I'm a she, but I'm calling her she. But people are always calling me out on that. So then I always catch myself. I'm calling her a she, whether or not she's a she. It can be
to the eye of the beholder.
Indeed. But she's really like turned inward. And it's like that feeling of when you're in that heightened state of emotion, anguish, where like you're barely holding it together. It's like, oh, it's so hard for me right now because I just like all of a sudden I put something in my life into this. And I'm like, my daughter had a panic attack over the weekend and I'm still kind of recovering from it. But like there was this, she kept closing her eyes and I was like, I didn't know if closing her eyes was a good idea. I thought it would like make her lost in it. So that's what I'm seeing is like she's really this person is really like lost in those feelings that she's feeling on the inside.
And you mentioned closing eyes. Closing our eyes signals our vagus nerve and our parasympathetic nervous system, the part that saves us, to seek safety. Right? Okay. So unless we're terrified because of a trauma experience, closing our eyes is actually a way that we kind of signify it's okay to rest or to pause. It is a really appropriate way, go inward
Okay.
to our body. Yeah.
Thanks. A little therapy moment. I'm like, oh, my
Yeah.
daughter's and I was
No,
like, I was
no.
trying to keep her present in her body, but I was like,
Yeah.
I didn't tell her to open her eyes or anything, but that was me just sitting there worried about
Hey,
it.
and even if you did, there's nothing wrong with that. I just feel
Yeah.
like that could be really insightful for a lot of people, right? It's just
Yeah.
something that we don't think about, that ability to go inward. Going inward, isn't wrong unless we don't come out, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. Thank you for that little moment. I always find some sort of personal life moment. And I'm like, there's a lot of personal life moments right now that
Yeah.
are oppressing. Okay. I just love this. I want to see it so bad in person. Okay. What do you think these like nails or pipes or whatever these are connecting the two sides of her face? What are you making of that?
In my mind, it is a visual reminder that even when we feel like we're split or coming apart, that there is still something that's holding us together.
Mm-hmm.
Because in those moments, I feel like we are unsure. And often when we don't feel put together, we want to change that as fast as possible, or we fear what will other people see or say or think. So to
Mm-hmm.
me, those nails are just a reminder. And some of them connect one side to the other. There are a few that are broken and don't connect, but the overarching picture is, even though there is a split there, there's still something connecting both parts of this
Mm-hmm.
person, from one side to the other.
Yeah, and I don't get the sense that she can be. I mean, if it's a huge, heavy thing, but like I don't get the experience, the feeling that she can be taken apart completely. Like I feel like those connections in between or the two sides of her face are very strong, especially if you look at like on the side of her. I guess it would be her right side, our left. There's some of these little things are bent so that it's shows how strong that those connections are and that they're not going to be very easily severed, that she will be able to pull herself or put herself back together, or whether maybe not even put herself back together, but maybe new connections are drawn and then it takes on a new form that
That
isn't
is what,
necessarily squished back together.
yeah, yeah. And that to me is hope. Hope
Mm-hmm.
is the aspect of knowing, regardless of what I've experienced and what I've been through and the ways that it has split parts of me or created separation, that there's still enough holding me together
Mm-hmm.
that I have hope that it's not always going to look this way or
Yeah.
feel this way.
Yeah.
But it's a powerful, powerful sculpture. And actually, when I did the book signing, the first book signing for Expired Mindsets, I actually did it at an art studio. And the art studio had an installation that it was showing that was called a show, Deconstructing Reconstruction. And we felt like that was such a great connection
Mm-hmm.
to the whole process of expiring a mindset, is being able to say, yes, where am I split? Where am I working against myself? And if I'm willing to acknowledge it and accept it, how does it allow me to reconstruct and come together in a different way? Because we're not ever going to be what we were. And that ideally isn't the hope. It's about moving forward and going, this is the version of me that the world gets now. So I see that in this photo.
Yeah. That seems to come up a lot. I think maybe it's just at the age that I'm at, but that so many people that I know are like, God, I used to be able to do things this way and I can't do that anymore. And I don't understand why. And why can't I just do what I used to? And even like I was at getting my hair done this weekend and she was like, I was like, my hair used to be able to not be blow dried. Now it just can't be blow dried. I have to blow dry it every time. And she was like, well, your hair changes. And I was like, okay. But it's just like everybody I talk to, it's like they are kind of holding themselves to these standards of like what they used to be able to, or who they used to be. And maybe it's just a learning to accept who you are now.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the struggle though, because if you feel like who you used to be, if there was something about it that we view as better or easier, then there's this natural part of us that wants to go back to the way things were. But as a result, we can miss out on, this is who I am now. And this is something new. But I think it's that part of us that wants familiarity, that loves to be comfortable. But we were designed to constantly be evolving and growing and changing, even though we may not always like it.
Yeah. Oh, I was looking at my standard phrase when I say this is I was looking at the artwork as you were talking, and I saw what you were saying as like I saw her like a past version of herself who presumably was whole without the gap in the middle and the thing splitting her apart, and like she's being pulled apart. But yeah, I saw that hope in all those empty spaces of I saw the hope and the possibility of what now can fill those empty spaces, and how she can now become something new, something bigger, and something else. There's like the process of transformation is like really uncomfortable. You're being split in half, but the possibilities are really exciting.
And they're intended to be. They can be scary and exciting, and it's reminding ourselves that both can exist at the same time. If we want something new and different, that typically means we have to release something else.
Yeah.
So that's what we have to keep in mind. We can't ask for more or different or new if we're still carrying everything that we've always had. So there is an element of, what is no longer necessary or useful. And that's what to me makes the funnels and the wheels that it looks like you can turn with the funnel very interesting to me, because they almost look like, in my mind, release valves.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Like they look like valves, like you would see if you pulled up your ceiling and looked at all of the different wires and things that are necessary, or different pipes. But there's something about, there's an ability to turn, and a release valve either tightens to keep something in, or you can loosen to let something out. And that really stands out to me on her left shoulder.
I love that. Yeah. Oh, and I feel too that she is not like white knuckling anything. She's not like trying hard to hold on to who she is. She looks like she is just allowing it. She's surrendering to the process. She's not like frantic about this. She's just like, okay, this is happening, and it's uncomfortable, and there's all these things happening, but I'm letting, I'm just going to let it.
Yeah.
Let it happen.
And that's what I was saying in the beginning. It's this duality in my mind of, there's some anguish there, but there's also this slight hint of relief at the same time, just depending upon how you look at it.
Yeah.
Her eyes are closed, but they're not clenched. They're not like, oh my goodness, I'm terrified. There is a surrender that's there.
Definitely. Oh, love this artwork so much. Okay. I love the release valve. And then I like to follow the different pipes, because she has them a lot down at the bottom, and then they kind of go into her head in different places too. And I'm like, what is traveling through those pipes?
Isn't that a $1 million question?
Is it her thoughts? Is it her feelings, her experiences?
Yeah. I would imagine it's all of the above, because even though we might be very focused on our thoughts one day, or we're focused on how we feel physically one day, just depending upon what is kind of sticking out the most. In truth, we carry those things with us all the time. They're all happening at the same time. We're just paying different amounts of attention. You know, we have thoughts that overwhelm our mind and then create a headache. Then we focus on the physical and sometimes detach from the mental that got us there, but they all work together.
Yeah, that like mind body connection, I can really see that happening here. It's like the bulk of like all the bigger pipes are down like in her shoulders, and you can kind of see it on the inside of her too. I've never seen a shot from the inside. I'm like, she looks like there could be more pipes on the inside.
Yeah.
I'm like moving my head around my monitor as if I can get a better look.
Get another look.
Like, that's not going to work.
You see something I do?
It's a 2D image. I'm trying to stick my head in there. I lost myself again. Oh, yeah. But it's like, I think that it makes me think about how we can get kind of so lost in our thoughts when like they are so intricately connected, like our minds and our bodies. And
and like you said too, we shoulder a lot of what we carry. You know, I don't know if there is as much symbolism as I'm creating or we're creating around that, but I do find it really striking that those valves aren't all, you know, at the top of her head. You know, there's one on the top of her shoulder up to the side of her neck, but the majority of them are at the base of her shoulders. And that's a place where we carry stress, we carry frustration, we carry fears. And I think we often disconnect how our body carries certain things. And I am still constantly drawn to the fact that on her right shoulder, down at the bottom, right next to the lowest valve, is an eye, you know, that clearly has a tear or what appears to be a tear coming out of it. And, you know, what's unique about that placement?
Yeah. What do you think?
I think everything has meaning. I think our body does have a way of showing its weariness and its exhaustion, which we don't always know how to recognize, or we don't always feel safe to recognize it. You know, if you felt overwhelmed physically, emotionally for a long period of time, I think we can get caught in believing it's just always going to be this way. But I love giving the message, whether it's with the people that I speak with or support, or even through writing, that our emotions are messengers. And even though we would love to just make them go away so that we can feel good, even the painful ones are trying to tell us something. So I look at it as a clue.
Yeah. It's fascinating to me if you kind of look at all of the graffiti parts and how most of them are just all on her shoulders. And I was thinking, and her chest, and, you know, to me, it looks like that is like all of the things that are placed on her by other people, because, you know, graffiti is people writing their names. It looks like it's done by not just one person came and did this, but it was like over time, different people came and like left their mark on the sculpture. And so it's almost like those are all of the expectations and identities and other things that like people have left on her over the years. But the eye does feel too very different in a way. Like it feels like that's more, I agree, that one really stands out as like looking like it's more part of her. But
yeah. And two, you know, you think about what you said, I love that symbolism in terms of the marks that people place on us, the stereotypes, the expectations, and we see a little bit of that coloring inside what appears to be like her brain. Yeah. And we see a little bit of it on her left in her hair right at the bottom. So it gives us an opportunity to think, is this a process that's happening bottom up and trying to take her over, or is it a
Oh.
process top down where she is slowly worked to wipe off or clean off or erase some of those
Mm.
aspects? And, there can be some conflict and exhaustion from trying to walk away from what other people have labeled you.
Yeah. I love that for that interpretation. And it feels so true to me because, as you know, I've been writing a book and I'm getting close to being done, but I've come to this place of having written it and like really processed my entire, because it's memoir, like processed my entire life. and now it's like I have this complete inability to go back to at all any of the stuff that I finally did filter out, like all of the things that people thought I was, all of the ways I was being to please other people. Like I cannot at all go back to it because I have spent so much time and energy like releasing that. And so I can see that like so clearly in her now. I love that perspective. She's just kind of like letting it flow off of her down, out, down and out.
Which might be
through that
part of
release
the dynamic.
valve.
Yeah. Right? It's like, ooh, this is hard work, but it's worth it. It's necessary. And, again, there is this aspect of, you think about when something is being built or rebuilt, sometimes you do have to demolish some aspects of it before you create something new. And we don't often think about that process with ourselves. But I think if we step back, we realize like, oh, that is a part of change.
Mm-hmm. And too, that it's not like you do it once and you're cured, like I have conquered my shame, like shame be gone forever. But like it's
only,
it comes back and so it takes you off guard and you have to kind of redo, rethink, reprocess, and every time you think that you're done, like something else kind of comes in. And like, I'm not sure if it's ever possible to like get all of that graffiti like out of her, completely out of her. There's always going to be places where those old stories kind of pop in.
Yeah. And for me, that's what I see and appreciate in terms of the inner part of her mind where we see some color there that fits to what you said. So even if we work outwardly to remove a lot of it, so it's not the first thing that people see, yes, it's still going to be a part of our mentality that we have to, like you're saying, continually work on, and then know what kind of environment, what kind of connections do I need so that I can stay present or show up the way I'd like to, right? When we try to make a change within ourselves, we have people who are used to us being a certain way and they've placed those labels. I use this term. There are people who benefit from your brokenness.
Yeah.
And they want you to stay completely covered up with all the markings because maybe it helps theirs not to be illuminated. And so, yeah, I think it is important for us to know if we struggle with something like shame and then feel like I'm doing better and then kind of see it resurge, all is not lost. And it doesn't mean that you're not healing, but it's a process and you just want to step back and go, all right, let me close my eyes. Take a breath and look in and go, what do I need in order to keep moving forward in a different way?
So is that really all what your book is about? Can you like what have we talked about that's just like, or has all of this been your book?
Truthfully, every ounce of this has been a theme that is found in Expired Mindsets, because it is not here's 5 steps to your life, right? I don't
Yeah.
believe that any 5 or 6 steps are going to solve anybody's life, and was very determined not to do that.
Yeah.
It is really an invitation. If we use this sculpture, it's an invitation to go, do I even recognize the graffiti marks that have been placed on me? Or am I just walking around in a turtleneck, pretending that they aren't there? And which ones do I like and think, oh, that would make a cool tat. Let me keep it. And which ones feel like a stigma or
Mm,
feel oppressive or feel unfair or feel like judgment, and knowing that it is exhausting. I will often tell people, and the people that listen to me appreciate it, and the people who don't come back and go, I should have listened. It's not intended to be a quick read because it is a
mm,
emotional book. I take people through a lot of my own moments that mimic this. My heart is open, but I'm really exhausted from this whole process of trying to survive life.
yeah.
And I invite other people to do the same at your own time and at your own pace. So a lot of what we've talked about mimics things that I bring up.
Yeah. Do you have, we've been kind of talking a little bit about this in the abstract and like as a whole, like at the big picture. Do you have a specific example, whether it's from your life or just, another person's, of of one specific like bit of graffiti that was placed on a person that they have to work through, or, just a more concrete
Yeah.
example?
Yeah. I would say, I'm thinking of a client that I worked with probably about 5 years ago who has always said, hey, you can share this story. And she was on the spectrum and constantly lived life feeling like she didn't belong,
Hmm.
and had family members who also highly intelligent but very concerned with appearances, and wouldn't get her the support that she needed because they feared how it would look on them, and just the stigma around not wanting to acknowledge that they had a child who wasn't perfect in their eyes, even though she knew something was wrong. And so this went back and forth for her for several years of painstaking experiences of not feeling like she understood herself, not feeling like other people understood her, feeling shame for how she responded to certain situations, and also feeling like a disappointment because she
Hmm.
could not be what her family wanted her to be. Long story short, going through college, she decided to kind of pick back up the opportunity to be in connection with people who could give her more insight around her patterns and who she was, and ended up finding out about what does it mean to be on the spectrum. It's not bad. It's not horrible. It just is. And
Yeah.
once you understand, oh, this is just how I'm wired, then the goal is for it to arm you with, I can advocate for myself, and there are relationships are possible for me with people who are understanding. But, when she found out or heard the language around, this is what you're experiencing and this is how it lines up here, it was so moving for her to feel like she had an answer. And for her, she said it gave her permission to decide, it is not my fault that they can't accept me as who I am. I'm going to choose to accept me as who I am, and they have to adjust. And that really changed the trajectory of her life.
Yeah. It's a wonderful story. It's one we're living at my house. My husband was diagnosed autistic last year. And it's been, I guess, yeah, it's been exactly a year since his official diagnosis. And it's like, we're still uncovering things where he's like, oh gosh, I can't believe that, like what that, or like how he could never get a job. Like job interviews were so terrible. He was like, it's because I was, it was a social situation where I was being judged. It's like every aspect of his life is now being like just looked at through a new lens of
Yeah.
like compassion and understanding and acceptance. And yeah, it's been really wild to experience and to watch. Like he's so much happier because he's just,
Yes.
yeah, so much happier.
Because it's that acknowledgement of what everyone thinks and has written
Yeah.
on me or written me off isn't truth.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's more to the story.
Yeah. So it's amazing. Okay. So what else are you noticing in the artwork that is drawing your attention that we haven't talked about yet?
I love that if we kind of were to go forward and through her heart opening, as you said, I love that language. There is a world of experiences beyond it. I think we
Yeah.
can get very focused on what's happening and stop in our tracks and get stuck in the process. But to me, the whole process of being able to kind of create some level of inner congruency is so that that energy is then freed up for us to experience things in a different way. So I find it really intriguing that whoever created this, it's going through it that
Yeah.
gets you to life on the other side. Can't go
Hmm.
around or, and I love something about that.
Yeah. If you look through it, you can see there's it's like a carnival atmosphere. There's like those big metal trash cans and there's people back there and there's lights and there's clearly something fun happening back there to experience. And this is where I can give you a little bit of information about the artwork. I kind of hold it back because I don't want it to skew. But this is actually the gateway or the entrance to a music festival
Oh,
in
how
Las Vegas.
cool.
It's called the Electric Daisy Festival or Electric Daisy Carnival, something like that. But it's like an
Okay.
EDM conference in
Okay.
Las Vegas. It happens every like May, I think. And I have some other shots of it of like there's one where it's
Oh,
actually well, oh shoot, I don't have the one where you can actually see all the people. I
yeah.
have one photo somewhere where you can see all the people.
That's
But
super
yeah,
cool.
it's at a music festival.
How interesting is that?
Yeah, it's pretty
I
cool.
love it. Yeah.
And I hadn't thought about that. Like, yeah, you open your heart and you do all this, and then it allows for like that richness of experience on the other side. I think that is a really beautiful perspective.
Yeah, I think we fear the unknown. So a lot of
Hmm.
times we hold on or don't take the time to kind of rid ourselves of different aspects because we feel like, but this is what I know, and
Yeah.
I don't know who I will be or what it'll be like if I'm not all of these things. So they exhaust me, but also I'm used to it. I'm comfortable,
Hmm.
but it's it just gives you a chance to see, no, there's something back here that you're going to want to experience.
Yeah, I love that. It reminds me, I have this client who has been working on like she's working on creating more space in her life. And she's like created all this space. She's let go of some clients. She's, changed some of her business around to like open up more time for herself. And she has found herself going like kind of freaking out a little bit, like, oh shoot. And now she's like trying to fill it back in because it's like it's really uncomfortable to have that
Hmm.
open space. And she's like, I need to fill it. I'm going to take this course. I'm going to do this. I'm like, no, wait. Your whole goal is to open space. Why are you trying to fill it again?
I see it
Um,
all the time.
yeah. And so now she's like, okay, I'm just going to allow myself to have this space. And I was like, yeah, it's hard because, especially when we live in this sort of productivity culture and this, we need to constantly be doing and creating and
Yeah,
like
grind
what
culture.
happens
Well,
when you allow like that space to exist. And that's when you can get to like, the awesome musical festival on the other side and the creativity and all of that.
I think it's just terrifying for a lot of people because in stillness is when we often come face to face with what we've
Yes.
ignored.
Mm-hmm.
I will often tell people, and I mention it a little bit in the book, who are you in stillness?
Yeah.
Right? That says more to me about your true inner state than anything else, right? We've all fairly, perfected the art of walking around and throwing other people off guard. But when everything slows down, when no one is around, when you are just with yourself, that's the greatest indicator of your level of emotional well-being than anything else.
Yes. Yes. Oh, there's a chapter in my book where I write about this period of my life where I was constantly moving, because if I slowed down for just a second, it would be anxious. I knew there were so many things I knew to be wrong with what I was doing and who I was being. But I was like, I just gotta keep moving. And the art, because each of my chapters has an artwork that I use to kind of like keep the narrative going. And then that one is the Jaws poster with like the girl swimming at the top and like the big Jaws is kind of coming up underneath. Yeah. And I'm like, and it was like, if she stopped swimming, that Jaws is just going to come up and bite her. And that's kind of how I felt at that period in my life. Like I had to keep moving. If I kept moving, I was fine. If I stopped moving, I would get, swallowed alive. I'd be forced to face all the things that I had been not wanting to face. So I love that. I wrote that question, who are you in stillness? That's a really powerful question. Because I think a lot of people too, it's like, if you have a moment of quiet, of stillness, you just like grab your phone and play a quick game or, send a text message. We're all constantly like, have to do something to fill that time, because I'm not comfortable just sitting with who I am right now.
Yeah. And those distractions just add to the distance, between what we show and what's actually happening inside. And eventually it all catches up to you. You get sick and then you have to be still, or something will happen that forces us to come face to face and go, okay, I can't keep carrying all of this. I'm going to have to look at it and stare it in the face and work through it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. When I was in the Jaws phase of my book, I was getting message after message, and it was just like, they kept getting bigger. And they always say the universe is to go, like, if you don't get the messages first time, then the universe is going to make it louder. And it was like, the messages kept getting louder and louder. And eventually it was just this big crescendo of like, you have to stop. And it just like, just knocked me over. And I was like, okay, I'll listen now. I became more uncomfortable to not listen than to like finally actually do it. It's very hard to like make that decision to face all the things that you're kind of, you're avoiding underneath. Yeah. How do we see that in this artwork? Now I'm just like, oh wait, we're talking about that. And then
do we see that how hard it is to,
like,
I mean, I feel like the expression in her face, again, that dichotomy shows I'm surrendering to this. One part of me is surrendering to this, but another part of me is labored, right? Is exhausted that I have to deal with this, because very few people, unless they've learned the hard way over time, choose. And part of that is because we're not taught. We're not taught growing up. We're not taught in our families how to manage distressing situations. It's modeled for us, just grind it out. Just go be happy, just keep going. So I do feel like once people feel like they know how, they're more willing, but there's going to be some part of us that feels like, wow, this is hard. And I feel like I see that on this person's face.
Yeah. Yeah. She is in the stillness herself. Like you can, and it doesn't like in the stillness, you do have all those like churning feelings, and like there's the chaos that's happening in this artwork, but she's willing to feel it.
And we have to be, in order to move forward.
Yeah. I keep seeing in this artwork, because I have a tell now that I've learned. It took a very long time to figure this out, but I have like really painful. My skin is really painful, and like it gets itchy, and it's been like this year-long thing trying to figure this out. Finally, I have like medical and emotional answers. But when I am like when I'm not feeling my feelings, when like, for example, I was kind of really mad about something recently, and I was like really, really mad about it, but I wasn't letting myself be mad about it. I was like pushing it down and pushing it down and pushing it down. And then like just within 3 days, my whole skin was just like flared up and like angry and like hurting. And I could only wear like one shirt for several days because it was the only one I could tolerate. And I was like, oh, this is my skin. And so every time I look at this, I'm like, I can see like that skin connection. I always have, like, anytime I see anything related to skin, it's like I can see that happening in there. But like, and then I allowed myself to be angry. I allowed myself to feel it all. Good. And then my skin was fine. It was like 3 days of like intense pain, but it was just like that allowing.
And our skin is our skin is a significant place where we see the results of like the psychological and the physiological connecting.
Yeah. It's like that meeting point of the inside and the outside. And it's like, and it's just this giant organ that, you know, is a part of everything. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting to me to see her, you know, her skin is such an important part of this artwork, like holding all of this.
And it even looks different on each side. I kept noticing that one side looks smoother than the other on her left side. Right underneath her eye almost looks like eczema patch or dry tears. There's a raised aspect to it. So you're definitely onto something that is also seen. You know, her skin doesn't look perfect. It doesn't look smooth. You can still tell that, you know, there are splotches on her face, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. And she has this like crack on her forehead on her right side. There it is. Yeah.
The splitting headache.
Yep. Yeah. Like all those sort of physical manifestations of what's happening on the inside that we just, you know, for a long time, I just tried to fix it all with medicine. You know, I was like, okay, I have chronic headaches. I'll just keep trying to take different medicines. Yeah. But it was emotional stuff that was happening that I was just trying to hide, you know, trying to fix with non-emotional solutions.
But again, that's what we were taught.
Yep.
Is to manage the symptoms. And that's part of why I wrote the book the way I did. I talk a lot about integration, about, you know, there's a mindfulness aspect in there, there's a reflective aspect in there, and wanting people to see that your physical and your mental are not disjointed. And if you only focus on your anxiety without maybe addressing your appetite, or you think this is what's happening in my appetite without impacting your stress, then it's like a game of whack-a-mole that you're playing with yourself. Whack-a-mole, for those of you that are too young to know what that is a game where little moles would pop up and you would try to hit one down with a little soft mallet. And the moment you hit one down, another one would come up. And if it would start off slow and get faster and faster and faster. And that's what happens when we just address a symptom instead of looking at how does every area of my life, how are all of those areas impacted by what I'm experiencing? And that's a mental shift that is helpful, but again, not one that we're taught. Take aspirin, just go put on nice clothes, just go hang out with friends, go out for a drink, like do this one thing, and then you'll feel better for a little bit until you come home. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of hope for like future generations because, you know, people of my generation, none of this was discussed ever. And then now I feel like my kids are 11 and 13, and I feel like their friends and them, like they know so much more about all of this than we did. And so it feels really good to see not everyone, but it's a complete like paradigm shift in how we view ourselves. And
I would agree.
Yeah.
I believe that this younger generation is much more open to the conversations. They're much more open to exploring kind of the recipe that created the dynamic in their life. And they're more willing, at least I'm thinking about the ones that I've worked with over time or looking at different research, they're also more willing to sit with discomfort if it will mean they find a way through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So we've been talking about an hour. So is there parts of this artwork that you have been looking at that we have not discussed? Is there anything you feel left unsaid?
No, I am really surprised at my own ability to actually connect with this artwork. Art for me is something that I've always loved and admired, but not had opportunity and space to connect with deeply. So I wasn't really sure what that would be like. So I'm very honored and thankful that you opened up this space to put things, together in this way. And it really actually just spurs me to go, I need to get more art
Yeah.
into what I do to give the people that I work with who I know are artistic different ways of making personal connections without it feeling like, oh, let's just sit and talk about you. But that being said, no, I feel like we went really deep
Good.
and I loved it.
Yeah, I love it because it's a safe thing to talk about when, talking about yourself can feel so raw and vulnerable, but you can talk if you talk about yourself through looking at this, it's like a metaphor, and there's so much richness that can come out of looking at a really powerful work of art. So I'm glad that you saw that, and thank you so much for joining me today. It's really wonderful.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, and we got to also let people know how to find your book, how to find you on social media.
Okay.
Can you
So
tell
the book,
us that?
easiest way is Amazon, but you can also have it ordered through any indie bookstore, Barnes and Noble, anything like that. I am most often on Instagram under Dr.Charryse_J, and Charryse is spelled Charryse. And then my website is drcharryse.com.
Awesome. And we will put all of those links into the show notes, as well as a link to the book. And again, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thanks again to Dr. Charryse Johnson for joining me in the podcast today. That was a really awesome discussion, and I hope that you check out her book and her stuff on social media. And, she mentioned at the end of the episode how it made her want to bring some of these artworks into her clients because, it's sometimes hard to talk about yourself and explore this type of thing just, with journaling or talking. But when you bring in a work of art, it adds such a safe place to explore your feelings. And that is really why I created the Art Connection Circle. And I am so excited to announce that the Art Connection Circle is coming back. So if you have been waiting for the next time I've been running it, it is coming up and will be starting in June. I will have all of the details available for you at artandself.com/circle. If you visit them and it's not quite fully ready yet, not ready as of the time I'm recording this, but I'm thinking it will be ready by the time I post this episode. There will be a place on there to join the waitlist. So if you would love the experience of talking about these works of art with a small group of people who are also connecting with the artworks and connecting with themselves and exploring parts of themselves, I would love to have you in that group. It is a really powerful experience where you get really intimate with yourself and also with the community. There's something truly, truly special when you get a group together. And you're experiencing this to a degree on the podcast with two people. When you add in some other people in there, the conversations are so rich. And you'll notice that, if one person sees something and makes a connection, it sparks you to make a connection in a different way. And the experience of looking at art in community, when it's focused on better connecting to yourself, there really is nothing like it. So you can get more information at artandself.com/circle. It will start in the middle of June on, I think, June 15th. Let me look. I'm just going to double check. because I'm going to Florida. I'm going on vacation. Yeah. The week of June 12th, it will begin. So I hope that you can join us. And if you have any questions, you want to talk it out, feel free to send me an email, cindy@artclasscurator.com. If you have any questions, you also can, if you need to have a quick 15-minute conversation, you can book a call with me to get your questions answered as well. So you can start that process by sending me an email or also visiting artandself.com/circle. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I hope to see you in the circle. Thank you so much for listening to Art and Self. And if you loved what you heard, please consider leaving me a rating or a review on iTunes. And share this episode with one friend who you know needs to hear what we talked about today. You will find links to the artworks that we discuss over at the show notes at artandself.com. And you can also join my email list to get notified of all of the new upcoming episodes. The videos of these episodes are also available over on YouTube at Art and Self. And you can also follow me on social media on Instagram at Art and Self and on Facebook at Art and Self Cindy. Thank you so much for listening and have a wonderful week.